Hey, this is Josh with Guitar Adventures, back again on our second installment of this video series. I've learned a lot. It's been a couple weeks since I first opened up this package, and I've had a lot of time to kind of just sit and digest everything, really look at the schematics, really understand what I'm getting myself into, and frankly, I'm a little bit scared. For those of you maybe watching this that have done this before, you're probably looking at me just shaking your head going, yeah, that fool, he doesn't know anything. And I don't. I admit that. This is the first time I've built a guitar, but I'm trying to figure this out as I go along. And I've had a good chance to understand a couple things. The first that I've understood is that a mold, which is this thing right here, is quite important. I have friends that have a dreadnought mold, but what I needed was an OM, an orchestra model mold, and that's something we didn't have. And it's something we could have built, but frankly, it just would have taken too much time. So for just, around $100 on LMI.com, the Luthier Mercantile International, I was able to take and just grab one of these, get it sent over. Another small mistake that I made that I had to change over was that when I first ordered the bracing, they ended up sending me just blocks for which I could, build my own bracing. Yeah, that's not going to be a lot of fun to do. So I realized just how much time that was going to take, and I decided to go ahead and order these again, shaped bracewood, and that makes all the difference in the world. Probably saved me days, if not more, worth of time just making this bracing right here. I'm a couple weeks in, and I realized that there's a long way to go. I'm enjoying it. I promise you, I am really enjoying this. You would enjoy it as well. But there's a lot of things that I'm learning about this process that I had no idea before. Well, finishing up the headstock design on my acoustic guitar here, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with it so far. I like it. Well, now that I've realized that this project is far too big for myself to do, and for the tools at my father-in-law's house, they're just the regular woodworking tools, I've enlisted the help of my friend Dave Apple. Now, he's not this well-known luthier, just like a lot of the luthiers that I know, but he's good at what he does. I've played some of his guitars, I've played his mandolin, his electric guitars, and they are not just beautiful looking, but they also have an incredible tone. And so I knew that he would be an excellent resource for me. So I came over here to his shop, and I thought that the most important thing that he would provide me is tools, naturally. But what I was surprised to find is that I learned more about guitars just chatting with Dave for an hour and talking with him about building a guitar from the ground up than I have basically over the past 10 years selling guitars or playing guitars. And so it was something that I found incredibly useful and valuable. And if you ever have a chance to sit down with a luthier, I recommend that you spend as much time as you can learning from them. So what I wanted to do, I asked Dave here so that he could walk me through a few of the tools that he has and basically talk about what tools have been incredibly useful for him, which tools are absolutely essential versus those tools that maybe just make the job easier. Because as with any job, tools, the right tools, can make things not just easier but also a lot faster.
First off, just some basic woodworking tools. These are kind of tools that I find are critical. You have to have tools to build a guitar. Obviously a good straight edge with a ruler on it, some basic files for finishing work. These are just pieces of metal, but what they are scrapers. And scraping a guitar and scraping wood, while not generally known in woodworking, is a great way to smooth guitar edges and set up bindings and that sort of thing. I like to have an X-Acto knife and a smaller ruler for smaller measurements. A set of chisels are really key. This is a fretting hammer. and we'll talk about fretting a little bit, but this is crucial. If you're going to do hand fretting, this is the tool to have. Also, for fretting, you're going to have a file to level your frets. More files down this way. This is a big rasp that's used more for shaping things like necks and headstocks. And then these files are specialty files for nut making. Making the nut and setting up the nut is really the final aspect of setting up the guitar after it's built, and it is critical for playability. This isn't something you can just do with a little round edge file or anything. These are sized specifically for the string width, and yeah, and you need them. This is also a fret crowning file, and this will take your frets after you've leveled them off and give it a nice crown on the top. Kind of critical as well to finishing your frets. A nipper, because your fret wire comes in long pieces and you need to be able to cut it with something to get it to size when you put it into the fretboard. This is a reamer, useful for the end pin, for the tuners, and also for your bridge pins. You have to have a tapered hole for all those applications. A small wood file. This is a 3-in-1 file, or saw, and it has 3 different saws on there, really handy, and it's only a 10/1000 thick, so it gives you a nice clean cut. A Dremel tool is essential if you're going to be doing anything like binding or inlay, and you are going to go on the inexpensive side. This is also a little base for the Dremel to do routing. Now, all that said, you can get away with this many tools, but to make your job easier, you're going to need more tools.
Okay.
The more you get into it, the more you enjoy making the guitars and building instruments, the more tools you'll collect, and it makes your job easier. One of the first things that I got when I started making guitars is this vise right here. This is a guitar vise, and it is padded on the inside so you can put anything in here and you can hold it tight, and it swivels 360 like this, and you can work both sides of the material at once. You can put an entire guitar here and it will hold it in these jaws so you can work on it. Great for fretting, great for drilling, that sort of thing, when you're connecting the body to the neck. Another thing that they don't supply with a kit but is really useful is a mold, and this basically will hold your sides and your blocks in place while you get the different parts glued up so that your guitar actually comes out in the shape it's supposed to come out in. Now, this isn't absolutely necessary. If you're just starting out, you can do things like this. This is just a piece of cardboard. You take the blueprint and trace it and make the body of this is a mandolin, and you set the sides in there and then spread it out with something, a stick or whatever you have around, that will help you keep that the rim in shape. Also, what they don't supply, what you may need, is a template, and this is a bracing template for the guitar we made for Josh, and this lays out exactly where the bracing will go, how it should be laid out, and you can transfer this by putting it on the top or the back and then drawing and connecting the dots, and it makes it much easier to set it up that way. Otherwise, you're kind of measuring the plans and then transferring those measurements onto the back, and hopefully you're getting it right. Another thing which is kind of important, clamps. Some nice wood clamps. These are cam clamps. So you set them on there and then hit the cam, and it squeezes down. I have several of those clamps. Now, if you have just wood clamps around your shop, if you're a woodworker, you can use those as well. These are kind of specialty ones for guitars. Another series of clamps are these clamps right up here. These are called spool clamps, and they just fit on the top and the back. When you're attaching a top to the sides or the back to the sides, you can put these around the guitar, squeeze them down and tighten it. And as you can see, I have a bunch of them. to go all the way around the guitar and keep it in a nice uniform clamping. Not required, but highly recommended, especially if you want to have nice clean joints all the way around. Obviously, glue is going to be one of your best friends. Make sure you get, this is Tight Bond glue, and this is the original. This is not the number 2 or the number 3. You want to get original wood glue or use hide glue because you want to be able to take it apart someday. Just in case you have a flaw, you can heat this up and the glue will melt and you can take things apart. This is one of my best friends. This is compressed air, and I use this to blow sawdust so I can see how I'm doing. But it's pretty handy around the shop. It does create a little bit of a mess on your floor, but my wife got over it. So doing a hand routing job on the guitar is difficult, and it takes some real practice to get it done well. I've gotten this tool here, and this is just a laminate router with this base, and this base will free float on top of the guitar body like that, and you'll be able to move your work around the router, and it gives you a nice even channel for your bindings. Obviously that's not a requirement to build guitars, but it sure is a nice addition. One of the things we use for gluing up the bracing on its back is this go-bar system here. This is a system that's fairly well known by luthiers, but what you do is you put your top or your back in here, you put your braces in place with some glue, and then you take these fiberglass rods and you place them on top of the work, and this gives it pressure and holds it down. You can do an entire top and an entire back at one time if you have enough of these fiberglass pieces.
Now, is it possible I guess, glue these without such a system?
It is, but that's all dependent on how many clamps do you have.
Yeah.
If you have 2 or 3 clamps, it's going to take you 4 or 5 days to glue up a top, because you want to let those clamps and the glue sit overnight, and then you're going to have to take them off and do a couple more, and do a couple more. It used to take me 3 days to do a top. Now it takes me a day.
Gotcha.
It helps out a lot. I think I did Josh's guitar in 3 weeks, and the finishing took me 6, and I'm not quite done yet. So what I have is a little spray booth, but you can use rattle can spray if you want. Theirs are just as effective. You just have to practice to get that finish laid on there real nice. It's very easy with a spray can to get droops and sags, put up on too much or too little. After I spray, I hang them in my garage like this mandolin. This has been totally sprayed. It's got about 20 coats of lacquer. You can do about 4 coats a day.
Okay.
4 to 5 coats a day. So you're going to need 4 or 5 good days to spray. Now, if you're a lucky or wealthy individual, you have an indoor spray booth that's controlled climate for humidity and temperature. I'm at the mercy of the elements. So in the spring and fall are my best times for spraying. In the summer here in Texas, it's too hot to spray, and in the winter, it's too wet and too cold. So
gotcha.
After you get those all on, you have to let the finish set for at least 2 weeks. If you don't, the finish will not be hard enough, and when you go in and try to level sand it down for the buffing process, then it will gouge and it'll take big pieces out. So you really have to be patient with it and let it set.
Gotcha.
After you've sprayed and let it sit, then you go into a sanding process, and what it is a wet sanding, just like automotive sanding. After they spray a guitar or a car, they go over it with wet sandpaper. And I use 1500 and 2000 grit wet sandpaper for my final finish. And after you've gone over the entire guitar or the instrument with the 2000 grit, then you take it to the buffing. Now, I have a buffing machine which is set up with medium grade and fine grade buffing compound, and this gives me a nice professional finish on it. This costs money.
Yeah.
You can do the same or fairly close to the same thing by getting a foam pad and putting it on your handheld drill. And
that's gonna be much cheaper option, I assume.
Much cheaper, but you're still gonna have to buy some buffing compound to put on here.
Okay.
The kind you put on the big buffer and the kind you put on the little pad are different.
Okay.
So you're gonna go one or the other, or maybe you keep this around for touch-up jobs.
Gotcha.
All right. Other than that, as you can see, once you get further in, I've got a bin full of parts. And I've got parts for most everything, for acoustic guitars, for mandolins, for electric guitars, even some specialty tools for knob pulling and bushings and things like that. But that's all down the road. You don't need those when you're first starting.
Well, Dave, thanks for bringing us through your shop. I hope that was helpful for all of you. This was definitely eye-opening for me, because these are all tools that I did not have at my disposal and would have made this guitar build process a whole lot harder for myself. You're going to find all the links to a lot of these tools, as well as different places that you can get it, in the description below this video. If this was helpful at all, please give it a thumbs up or leave comments with any questions that you have. My name is Josh. This is Guitar Adventures. Remember, play hard and enjoy the adventure.